Welcome to the Justice in Heels podcast. I'm your host, Danielle Hayward, and I'm thrilled to have you join us for season 2. In this season, we focus on sharing stories and exploring strategies that empower those in the legal field to not just survive, but thrive in their careers. So, whether you're a seasoned lawyer, a fresh graduate navigating the legal landscape, or just someone curious about the world of law, Season 2 of this podcast is your go-to source for inspiration and support. Hello and welcome to the Justice in Heels podcast. Today, I am joined by Lali Moraba, who is going to speak to us a bit more about circadian biology. Lali, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Danielle. It is a pleasure to be here and also just to be speaking with you and your audience.
So, before we start with this very interesting topic, can you maybe just tell our listeners a bit more about yourself? And I know that you were an attorney and then you
Yes.
actually transitioned into the health and wellness space. So, maybe also tell us what made you actually make that change.
So, yes, I was a corporate attorney, private practice, serving private clients and public sector clients. And I transitioned to lecturing law at some point. But along the way, actually, I picked up some health coaching courses because I've always had an interest in health and in wellness since I was a little child. And so I just studied these little things on the side. And then I decided to formalize it after I stopped lecturing. That was, I think, in 2017. And then I thought, let me pursue more of the health angle of things. So I've been going along that route for quite a while now and then formalized my health coaching business 2 years ago. So this is me now. And really, it has been a desire of mine to serve lawyers. I remember what it was like being a corporate lawyer and the kind of life that I led, and always feeling torn, right, between my work and taking care of myself based on what I knew from what I was gathering, from what I was reading. And so I thought to myself, this is exactly the kind of person that I would want to serve myself 10 years ago, 15 years ago. So, which is why I'm a health coach in this sector.
Wow, that's fascinating. So, for the listeners who may not know, what is circadian biology? Can you tell us a bit more about
Circadian. So if we just break down the terminology a bit. So everybody, I think, understands circadian rhythms, or at least is familiar with the term. Let me say that. They may not understand, but they're familiar with the term. Circadian rhythms are the 24-hour cycle that all our bodies, humans, plants, animals, we all run on this. Living things run on a circadian rhythm. And it is largely controlled by the sun. So the sun has a 24-hour kind of cycle. We know that. So if we're speaking about humans now, we, on our skin, in our bodies, our organs, our cells, most of our cells in our bodies, in fact, all of them, not most of them, and even through our eyes, we have circadian, we could say, biological clocks. And we are supposed to be naturally, those clocks are meant to be wound up by the sunlight mostly. And then we also have what is called an infradian rhythm that is run mostly by the moon, but that's a separate issue. So that's circadian rhythm that we're supposed to be running on this. Biology, the biology aspect of it is going to explain exactly that for humans, our bodies run on this. And circadian biology is a term that is not popular as yet, but I think it's a term that is growing because it has really been coined by people in the quantum and circadian biology space who are trying to say to us that we as beings, we are light beings. We are fundamentally light beings. And therefore, we should think of ourselves in a different way from how we've been thinking thus far. Because a lot of biology, a lot of the teaching about the human body thus far is that the human body is a machine. And so we are turned on and off, almost like a machine and that we run like cogs, which is ironically how we also function even in our work as lawyers and as accountants as such, right? We work like machines, but circadian biology is an alternative term that is coming into the mainstream to try and change the way we think of ourselves as humans, to say, because we are light beings, the primary way that we should function is to be controlled by light. So when it's daytime, from morning until evening, that's when we do most of what we need to do. And then when the sun sets, we also, in a sense, we set, right? And it's the way that we're designed. It really is the way that, whether you believe in creation or evolution, it's the way that we're designed to function. So that really just provides a summary of what circadian biology is. Yes.
So you said that a lot of your clients, or most of them, are actually in very stressful occupations. So that's
Yeah.
like your attorneys and your accountants. What other type of professionals actually use your services and why?
It's executives who are recognizing that they're tired, but they're admitting it to themselves, but perhaps not as much as they should. They're realizing that, oh, I'm not what I used to be in my 20s. Any one of us can get away with a lot of stuff when we are 20. I was in this profession in my 20s and 30s. And I know the kinds of things I used to do. I used to be that girl who was driving home at 3, 4 in the morning from work, and we can keep that up for 10, 15 years, but then you get to 35 to 40 and you realize that things aren't working quite the way that they used to. And then people then are coming to me to try and help them to fix their sleep, their energy, their nutrition. And because also what we teach in circadian biology is that, as I said earlier, the human is one whole thing. You are not your brain is not one part of this machine, your heart another, your attempts at losing weight yet another. If you want to, for example, to take the example of losing weight, if you want to be able to lose weight effectively, you find that you are stopped from doing that because you're not sleeping adequately, which is another reason that people would come to me to say, oh, you're a health coach, help me to shed these pounds, and so I have to say to a person, well, let's look at your sleep first. Sometimes people are coming directly to deal with sleep. Others, they're coming saying, I want to lose weight. And then I'm saying, let's look at all of you to see how you are eating, how you are sleeping, your movement, your emotional well-being, and then what I call your light hygiene. How are you relating with light? And by that, I mean natural light, the sun, and then also the artificial light that we have in our homes. And then people then look at me like, what does that have to do with anything? And I say, well, let me tell you that because you are a light being, how much light you get naturally in proportion to the artificial light affects whether your hormones are going to be released at the right times of day. And the ones that need to sit when the sun sets, are they going to do that? And then your melatonin, which everybody knows, a lot of people are on melatonin supplements, but our bodies make the melatonin. It needs to rise at night when you are now going to bed, and that's not happening. So therefore your sleep is disrupted, but then you think it's only your sleep. And it turns out that actually it affects even all your hormones. And especially, as I said, if you're trying to lose weight, that is affected by how much melatonin you have at night, how much cortisol you have during the day. And these things then collide and create chaos in our bodies. So it is attorneys, accountants, executives who are finding themselves now struggling, and then struggling also with their work performance. How you feel about yourself. If you're struggling with weight, it's going to also reflect sometimes in the confidence you have at work, and you find that I'm not as sharp as I used to be. Words are at the tip of my tongue and not coming out the way that they used to be. Especially as women also go into perimenopause as we get older, and they find that I got to do something. I got to do something about this. Yeah.
Sure. That's interesting. You don't really, I think we as individuals don't really realize how much your sleep actually impacts like all of these things, like your mental health, your physical health. Um, yeah, very interesting. But so you've mentioned quite a few benefits now. But
Yeah.
can you
Yes.
maybe add a few more? So you said weight loss, it's great for stress management. It's great if
Mhm.
you are maybe going into menopause? What other amazing benefits does this therapy basically have?
I think let's talk about what you just mentioned, the mental health, right? It's becoming a big conversation in society. And, I think in October we have Mental Health Month. And I often say to people that we don't realize how much sleep has to do with something like mental health. We want to bring mental health to the center to make it a conversation. But we're speaking about it, I find, in some areas, as though people are victims who cannot help themselves. And so therefore we say, okay, take this pill. And there's nothing wrong. I want to be clear. There's nothing wrong with people going in medication if they need to. But then when I deal with person one-on-one, then I'm able to dig in a little bit deeper and I'll ask them, when are you going to sleep? What's happening when you're going to sleep? What are you doing concerning your sleep in general? Because that is going to affect how those hormones that these mental health drugs, that these antidepressants, etc., are meant to address. If you are not sleeping right, you might find that you then have to depend on these drugs. But if you change some things about your sleep, you might find that you need less of them or eventually not even any at all. So that I think is really, really important, especially in professional spaces where we find that people's mental health plays itself out in these spaces where you have cranky bosses. People are really ugly to each other, and that's because they are underslept. So I ask people sometimes, are you depressed or perhaps you underslept? And then, you get over the initial offense at me asking that, because the person then thinks, are you downplaying what's going on in my life? I'm saying by no means at all. But you have to understand that the way that the body is made is that you need to have foundations like sleep in place, because without that, you are affecting your mind, your brain. You are affecting so much about your life, which then shows up in the way that you live out there. So you might think that sleep is an individual thing, but it turns out that sleep is very much a relationship thing. If you are not sleeping well, you are cranky with the people you work with or your own family. If you're not sleeping well, you're not performing at work, which affects your company, your organization's bottom line. And so those are the benefits, right? It's quite indirect, we might think, but when we look at it closely, you realize it comes more directly in line with that. So we're not just looking at how sleep affects your weight, how sleep affects your own space, but also beyond that, and then even again on other physiological issues. People suffer from diabetes, for example. Diabetes is a blood dysregulation, so blood sugar dysregulation issue. And if you're not getting enough sleep, and if that is also connected to your circadian rhythms, it means that you end up with serious diseases like diabetes, even cancer, sadly, because again, we know the correlation between cancer and sleep, between diabetes and sleep. And when you look closer then and you realize that, oh, if I'm not sleeping well, and part of the reason I'm not sleeping well is because I live this indoor life. Our modern day living is completely indoors. We are outside only very incidentally, exactly. We're outside because I'm going to my car, and then from my car to the office, or from the office to the mall, or to the gym, and all our life is inside. And you realize that, oh, I'm living this very busy, very seemingly powerful life, but it's affecting me in a way that I really may not like if I look closer at it. Yeah.
Something I want to add to those really great points that you made is
Mhm.
also a dependency. I want to say dependency or addiction to coffee, so caffeine and energy drinks. I remember when I
Yes,
was actually working
exactly.
in like law firms, everybody was basically addicted to energy drinks. Like there were so
Mhm.
many, like you would like down free energy drinks during the day, which is obviously not good for you. And it also, like you
Yes,
said, the diabetes, it can affect your health, not only your mental health, but also your physical health. So I think, yeah, that's
absolutely.
also something that
Absolutely.
getting adequate sleep can help to combat.
And it's very interesting you say that, because one of the reasons why I'm in this work is because I used to suffer from an energy deficit so much. In the middle of the day, I would get into the slump and I was just always tired. Even on days when I slept well, I just found that I was just tired. And when I started observing circadian principles. Even though I've never been a coffee drinker, so I didn't have that dependency. I used to take other energy supplements, and I found that I just didn't need them anymore. That was just such a mind-blowing experience for me to realize that waking up in the morning and going outside to tell my body what time it is in the day. Because when I go outside early in the morning and the sun is already there at sunrise in Joburg, currently it's probably around like 5:30, 5:35. My body then knows that. And at the time of the morning, it starts making energy hormones for me. That's the right time for my cortisol to go up because that's the big energy hormone that we have in our bodies. And it goes up gradually until around this time in the afternoon when it starts to taper down again because I no longer need that drive anymore. So I find that, oh my gosh, just within a week, you can change this within a week where you go outside at the right times of day and you find that, oh, I no longer need that cup of coffee. People wake up and they're still with their eyes closed. They're heading for the coffee, right? And then at 10 a.m. again, they need maybe a Red Bull because now the coffee's gone out of the system. And then at 3 p.m., maybe they need another coffee. And you realize that when you start observing circadian principles, you no longer need to spend a small fortune on energy supplements, on coffees, because you're allowing your body to be given the right messages by the sunlight, which is free. As I always say to people, it's free. And when it gives you the energy that you need, you can still have your coffee. I got nothing against the person wanting to have it, but you might find that instead of 3 cups, you're having 1 cup, and then you only need it later in the day, as opposed to, I cannot function, don't talk to me until I have my coffee. We all know those memes, and I think lawyers are on the front line of those memes. And you find that I don't need that anymore. I can function. And then even at night when I'm going to bed, because many people say, oh no, I can drink coffee and it doesn't affect my sleep. People think it doesn't because they're so used to maybe patchy sleep that they don't realize that somewhere their sleep architecture, as sleep experts call it, does become affected. But when you don't take those substances anymore, you find that you can sleep well. Then you can get into deep sleep. And then you're able to also not just fall asleep, but stay asleep. Because that's another thing that people find that they have a problem with. A lot of people that I deal with will say, no, I don't have a problem falling asleep, but then in the middle of the night, I wake up and then I'm up for 3 hours. And that also, again, it becomes a circadian issue. It becomes an issue of how much natural light did you get during the day? And also, what are you eating at what time of day? And how's that affecting your blood sugar going up and going down while you're asleep? Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. So, what are some of the most common misconceptions that people have around energy and sleep?
Sure. I think we've all heard the line, we'll sleep when we're dead, right? People say that a lot. And it's very sad. It's becoming less and less funny for me. I think it used to be one of those funny things that we used to hear, but more that I'm seeing how badly poor sleep is affecting people. I'm now just like, can we just stop saying that line? Because people are dying and they don't even realize that from not sleeping properly. So people think that sleep is an inconvenience because we all have to make deals, especially in the professional sector. We're all trying to close deals, and while I'm sleeping, my colleagues or my competitor is trying to make it rain somewhere else, and we need to realize that we need to be able to sleep and to sleep adequately. Another thing that people think is that they can survive on maybe 3, 4, 5 hours of sleep. They're good. And that's because the body begins to compensate. It's not because you're actually doing okay. Your body just becomes used to that and it just begins to compensate. And therefore, you also become used to functioning suboptimally. You think it's okay to be where you are until you start fixing things and you realize, oh my gosh, actually, this is, it's not working the way that it used to. And now I realize that I was functioning suboptimally. With regard to energy, we think we're going to get energy from external substances. We think that, oh, if I just have enough Red Bull, enough coffee, I'll be okay. But you're not going to be okay. And it's not something which is isolated from other issues that you might suffer in your body. Because as I said, we are light beings, and light is the foundation of ourselves and of our bodies. And energy in our bodies is made from the mitochondria in our cells. I think we all learned about mitochondria in primary school or high school biology. And those little mitochondria in our cells are where our energy comes from. And the mitochondria communicate only with natural light or with artificial light, depending on what you feed it. Obviously, if they're communicating with artificial light only, they're going to get the wrong messages. They're not going to make the energy that we need. But if they're getting messages on a regular basis throughout the day from different times of the day from natural light, they'll give you the energy that you need for the day. So energy is not from external substances like coffee, etc. It must come from inside. And the primary way that we make it is by getting adequate sleep. And the primary way for us to get adequate sleep is by getting enough sunlight during the morning hours for us to be able to, because even at the morning time is when our sleep hormones are actually made. And many people aren't aware of this, that at the same time as our body's making the energy hormones we need in the morning, and they also, if they get the right signals, our bodies are also making what I call the precursor hormones, which then end up making melatonin at night. So if you get enough light during the day, you'll be able to get the sleep that you need later on in the evening.
Very interesting. I'm trying to take in everything that you are saying because it's just like it's
Yeah.
super interesting and it's something that affects all of us. Like nobody can actually say this is a topic that like does not affect me at all.
Yes.
But
Yes.
what are some of the practical ways that busy professionals like attorneys and accountants and business owners can actually align their lifestyle with circadian principles?
So yeah, when a person comes to me and then they say, "Oh, but Lali, I can't do this because I'm busy, I'm in the office, etc." I then say to them, "Let's look at your day." I'm not saying that you're going to be like a lady who lives out in the village, who most of her life is happening outside. But let's look at your day. If you're waking up at 5 a.m., let's say in the summer in Joburg, you can spend, I think most of us can try and find 5 or 10 minutes at that time of the morning to just go outside. Or even if you can't go outside, just open a window to get the natural light unfiltered coming into your bedroom or whatever room of your house. But primarily, I say go outside for 5-10 minutes, connect, you can just go outside barefoot, connect with the ground and get that light in your eyes. That's one thing that you've done. And that is probably, I say to people, if you've got 99 problems, that solves 90 of them. If you can just do that, you would have won a great victory. And then later on, throughout your day, find pockets of time where you can either work for a few minutes outside, or if you have phone calls to make that maybe you don't have to write notes for. Even if you do, you can just go and sit. If you're in the office, you can maybe go outside in the balcony if they allow you to do that, and you sit there and you take your notes and you take your phone calls. Many of us work from home these days. You can work on your patio, or you can work close to your own window, which you know that the office isn't going to be like, oh no, we don't open windows here, we only do aircon. You can open a window and work close to you, to a window. That's something that does not take away at all from your business, from what you are doing, that you need to produce for your work. While you're driving around, crack your window a little bit open. Again, just to get that natural light. And I know we live in Joburg and it may be a bit dangerous, but just crack it a little bit open. You can still have your aircon on in the car. It'll still do its job. Just that window allowing natural light in. Those are little wins you can get throughout your day, so that you can have that window open maybe in the mornings when you're going to work, in the evenings or in the late afternoons when you're going home. And then when you're at home, I know you want to send emails, you still have this and that to finish off. I say to people, buy filters, because the devices we have these days, they do come with filters, but it doesn't seem like the research that has been done on them shows that they may not be sufficient to block the blue rich light that our devices come with. So I say to people, buy some filters. They're not very expensive. You can just download some apps and you buy those filters that you can have on your laptop, so that you can still send your emails, but you're not getting this artificial light that is hitting you, because every time that artificial light connects with your eyes, it might be 9 p.m. in the evening, but it's telling your body it's 12 midday, for example. So now you try to go to bed, let's say around 11 p.m., but you find that you're struggling to unwind and to fall asleep. And that's because your body thought, up until the time when you decided to go to bed, your body thought it was 12 noon. But if you have the filters on your phone, if you have them on your laptop, then they're able to at least block that blue light. And therefore, you can go to bed having sent your emails and not struggle to fall asleep. Those are things that it'll cost you a little bit, not much at all. Very, very little actually for a professional to pay for those filters. But the morning light is free anyway. Cracking your window is free. Working next to a window, also free. And none of that takes up too much time from you. But it does make a huge difference in your health.
Sure. Yeah, it's really like small changes that you can make that
Yes,
actually make such a big difference. That's amazing. And these
they
days,
do.
you even
They
get
do.
like glasses that
Yes.
block the blue light, which is also amazing.
Yes, I actually have a few pairs of those. I own about 3 pairs of those. They are a bit difficult to get a hold of in South Africa. So I don't talk about them a lot as the primary thing, but I mean, really, for me, they are. In the evenings, around 8:30 p.m., I put on my glasses. But if a person can get hold of them, I definitely say that they should. So far, I've had some clients buying them from overseas via Amazon. They've been able to get some that way. And there's 1 or 2 companies in SA that sell them, but they often run out of stock. So it becomes a bit hard for people to get hold of those. But they've been absolutely life-changing for me, because the minute you put them on, because of that red or orange lens that they have, they begin to communicate to your body again that it's nighttime, and you make enough melatonin to be able to go and fall asleep at bedtime. So those are incredibly amazing. So I often just talk to people about the filters, because those you can get. You just need to buy an app and you can get those. But if a person travels, for clients of mine who say they travel or have people who travel, I say to them, when you go to Europe and you go to the US, make sure when you get there, you buy those glasses. Don't come back without them, you know. So, yeah.
Game changers.
Mhm.
Okay, so if there's only one thing that our listeners can take from this conversation, what should that
Mhm.
be?
Get out, get some sun.
Get out, get some sun. Okay, quick and
That
simple.
I would love to have that on a billboard. You know, oh, if I can make it a little bit longer, get out in the morning, get some sun. If they could do that, honestly, it would make such a difference to a person's life, especially professionals who spend so much time indoors. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Lali, thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed this conversation. I learned so much from you. Where
Thank
can our
you.
listeners reach you?
So if people want to get hold of me on the socials, they can find me on LinkedIn, Lali Moraba. If they just put that in, they'll find me there. That's where I'm sharing this kind of information almost every day. I talk about sleep, nutrition, light health almost every day there. Otherwise, my website is kanyawellness.coza. Kanya being the Nguni Sesotho word for light. And that's my business. Yeah. So they can also kanyawellness.coza, find me there. And my email, lali@kanyawellness.coza.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Justice in Heels podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, feel free to share it with your friends on social media and tag us. As this podcast has a legal element, just a quick disclaimer that all views expressed in this podcast are not necessarily the views of the firms, companies, or brands that we are associated with. Until next time, goodbye.